There's a moment right before everything changes, when you feel like breaking. You've done the work. You've waited in silence. You've surrendered. And just as you expect relief, life tests you harder than ever before. This is not a punishment. It is the final crucible. The threshold between who you were and who you are about to become. What you asked for is not for its close. But the question remains, can your current identity survive the magnitude of what's coming? Stay until the end, because what you believe is falling apart may actually be falling into place. There is a strange moment in every human life when the soul senses a transition approaching, and yet, all visible signs suggest stagnation or collapse. This is the moment of tension before the transformation, when the unconscious prepares to push something new to the surface, but the ego resists. People often mistake this silence, this spiritual inactivity, as abandonment. They interpret the delay as a sign that their desires are being ignored by the universe, that their prayers are echoing into a void. But in truth, this pause is not a rejection, it is a sacred interval, a chrysalis in which the old must die so that the new can be born. The universe doesn't delay to frustrate you, it waits to refine you. For what you've asked for is not just an arrival of external blessings. It is an invitation into a deeper initiation of the self. The psyche does not evolve in straight lines. The deeper truths of who we are come not through immediate reward but through symbolic death and rebirth. The final test before transformation is rarely obvious. It is subtle, psychological, and often disguised as everything going wrong. The delay is the initiation. When you ask for something great, healing, love, purpose, power, you are asking for a version of yourself that does not yet exist to be born, and the version of you that stands today must first dissolve for that birth to happen. So the universe begins to withhold not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. It begins to strip away distractions, comforts, and illusions. It pushes you inward, away from external validation, and into the raw material of the unconscious. You begin to feel uncertain, vulnerable, even anxious. And this discomfort is the invitation. It is the teacher disguised as a burden. Most people panic and rush to escape it, seeking immediate gratification, or distracting themselves with superficial comforts. But those who understand this as the beginning of transformation, these are the ones who pass through the veil. In this phase, life seems paradoxical. You feel more awake than ever, yet more exhausted. You feel closer to something divine, and yet more lost. You're no longer satisfied with the life you used to tolerate, but you haven't yet stepped into the life you've prayed for. This is not confusion, it is psychological tension. It is the moment just before breakthrough, when the old framework of your psyche begins to crack open. It must, because the vessel that held your previous worldview can no longer contain what is forming inside you. And so comes the collapse of the old self. Not all at once, but slowly, piece by piece. At first, it feels like sadness, fatigue, perhaps a growing sense that you no longer relate to the people or passions that once energized you. The ego, confronted by the rising shadow of your unconscious, begins to panic. It tells you something is wrong, that you're going backward, that you've failed. But what's really happening is that you're outgrowing the life that once fit. The mask is coming off. The archetypes that once ruled your decisions, the people pleaser, the perfectionist, the chaser of approval, begin to fall away. And without them, a frightening silence emerges. Who are you without your wounds, without your ambition, without the story you've told yourself about what life should be? The old self cannot answer these questions. It was never designed to. And this is where most people run. They grasp desperately for the old identity, for familiar pain, for the safety of limitation. But if you endure the dismantling, the unconscious begins to speak. Not in language, but in symbol, in dreams, in synchronicities, in repeated patterns. The soul begins to reveal itself. But it reveals itself in solitude. You will be isolated on purpose. Friends will fall away. You will feel misunderstood, even by those who once held you closely. Invitations will stop. Your phone will go silent. At first, this feels like punishment, but over time, you begin to see the truth. This loneliness is sacred. It is not the absence of connection. It is the refinement of it. You are being taught how to connect with your inner world without distraction. You are being trained in the language of the soul. And for this work, noise must be removed. This period of isolation is one of the most misunderstood phases in the journey of transformation. Our culture teaches us to fear aloneness, to equate silence with lack, and solitude with failure, but the deeper psyche knows otherwise. In solitude, the unconscious comes alive. The dream world intensifies. Memories you've long buried rise to the surface for reconciliation. In this space, the soul prepares itself for the arrival of what you've asked for, not by bringing it to you, but by making you into someone who can carry it without being destroyed by it, because you cannot carry divine purpose with a fractured identity. You cannot hold great love with a heart still loyal to old wounds. You cannot step into abundance while unconsciously believing you are unworthy. The silence of this final test is the healing space in which these contradictions are burned away. The ego will rebel. It will say, "What am I doing wrong?" But it's not about doing, it's about becoming. This silence is not absence. It is gestation. What no one tells you is that the final test doesn't feel like a test. It feels like being forgotten. It feels like falling apart for no reason. It feels like losing what little hope you had left. But in truth, this is the moment of rebirth. Not a poetic metaphor, but a psychological reality. The psyche is being restructured. Old neural pathways are being dismantled. Unconscious beliefs are being surfaced and questioned. Archetypes within you are shifting. This is the internal earthquake that must occur before the structure of your life can realign. So if you find yourself in the silence, in the isolation, in the waiting that feels endless, know this: you are not being punished. You are being prepared. And it is precisely at this moment that you must not run. Because the old self will whisper to you that this is regression, that nothing is happening, that you've been forgotten by the very force you once trusted. But the truth is, the deeper transformation always begins in darkness. The womb of the future feels like death to the mind clinging to the past. You are not failing, you are forming. And the pain you feel is the pressure of becoming. Does not speak the language of urgency. It speaks in symbols, in slow revelations, in silent but irrevocable truths. And when the time comes, and it will come, you will emerge not as someone who received what they asked for, but as someone who has become it. Until then, you are being readied in the most sacred way possible, by being pulled inward, by being stripped of illusion, and by being forced to face the parts of yourself you once fled from. There are no shortcuts in this work. To become truly whole is to allow the collapse of everything that is not you. And in this sacred disintegration, you will come to see what you could not before. That the universe was never withholding your desires out of cruelty. It was holding them back until you were someone who could hold them with integrity, with power, and with peace. Not just because you asked, but because you endured the fire that forged you worthy of receiving. And as the silence deepens, and your solitude begins to reshape the contours of your identity, a curious thing begins to happen. Life starts to tempt you. Not with obvious distractions, but with illusions that closely resemble what you've asked for. Opportunities arise that feel almost right. People appear who carry the scent of what you longed for, but not its substance. This is not coincidence. This is not bad luck. This is a sacred test of discernment, of final temptation, before the truth reveals itself. The unconscious, ever intelligent, does not merely deliver the object of your desires. It ensures that you can recognize what is real by first confronting you with what is not. And so, the trial intensifies, not through suffering alone, but through seduction. At this stage, the soul is being taught how to say no, not to what is evil, but to what is almost right. And this is the harder choice. Anyone can reject what is clearly wrong, but to walk away from the opportunity that looks good on paper, that appeals to the ego, that promises instant relief from the ache of waiting. This requires clarity. It requires a connection to the deeper intelligence within, to the voice that knows the difference between a counterfeit blessing and a true alignment. If you are not anchored in your essence, you will take the bait. And you may even convince yourself that this is what you've been waiting for. But the universe does not operate on surface appearances. It tests the readiness of your soul by offering your shadows before substance. You will be offered approval when what you truly need is solitude. You will be offered attention when what you truly desire is love. You will be offered shortcuts when your path demands patience. And you will be asked again and again, do you want what comes easily, or do you want what is true? The deeper psyche understands that temptation is not a flaw. In the process, it is a vital part of it. Because the ability to recognize the false is what sharpens your inner vision. And only through such sharpening can you become the vessel capable of holding what you've asked for. You are not merely being trained to receive, you are being trained to see, to perceive with spiritual clarity, not emotional hunger. And this is why the temptations grow stronger the closer you get to alignment. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're being asked, have you truly changed? Or are you simply waiting? Many fall here. They mistake premature opportunities for destiny. They abandon the soul's unfolding for something more immediate. And though these detours can offer temporary comfort, they often lead back to the same emptiness that birthed the desire in the first place. The soul cannot be tricked. It will not settle. If you are truly on the path of becoming, it will call you back again and again until you choose truth over imitation. And as the testing continues, something even more difficult emerges. Your deepest insecurity surfaces. The part of you that you've hidden, rejected, and disowned comes to the forefront. You will be made to confront the very wound you thought you had buried for good. If your fear is rejection, you will feel abandoned. If your fear is inadequacy, you will feel unseen. If your fear is failure, you will face apparent defeat. This is not the universe being cruel. This is the soul demanding integration. For the personality you have constructed, the identity shaped by trauma, expectation, and survival cannot carry the fullness of what is meant for you. And so the very fear that wants to find you must be brought into the light, not to shame you, but to liberate you. Because what you cannot look at will always control you. You cannot transcend what you are unwilling to acknowledge. And so, the psyche brings it forth. You feel the panic, the doubt, the shame, the hopelessness. But these are not regressions, they are revelations. They are the final splinters of the false self, rising to be healed. And in this moment, most people ask, why now? Why is this coming up just when I thought I was ready? But this question itself reveals the misunderstanding. Readiness is not a feeling. It is a confrontation. You are ready because you are being asked to face it now. The soul does not waste time. It brings up only what you are strong enough to transmute. And so this test is not a punishment, it is a sign that the deeper work is nearing completion. The great paradox of healing is that your most sacred transformation is often hidden beneath your most painful insecurity. What you perceive as weakness is the gateway to your power. What you fear is not what holds you back, it is the path forward. But only if you stop running. Only if you allow it to rise fully, without denial, without resistance. Then, and only then, can the alchemy occur. The old wound becomes wisdom. The trauma becomes teaching. The fear becomes fire. And you begin to see that the universe was never asking you to escape yourself. It was asking you to embrace yourself completely. But this embrace demands a cost. You must let go of the identity that was built to survive the world. You must release the story that kept you small. You must dismantle the mask that won approval, admiration, safety but denied the truth of who you are. And this is the true cost of transformation. It is not the pain of loss. It is the courage to no longer pretend. You begin to realize that you are not the one who desires healing. Success, or love you, are the one who is being reborn through those desires. The you that longed for transformation is not the same you who will emerge on the other side of it. And when that emergence begins, when you pass through the temptations, the trials, the self-confrontations, you realize something profound. You no longer need what you once begged for. Not because you don't value it, but because you've become someone who no longer feels incomplete without it. You've been changed. Not through the receiving, but through the waiting, through the wrestling, through the dying and rising of your inner world. The universe does not give you what you want. It gives you the conditions in which you become. It does. This is the mystery most people miss. We think of our desires as destinations, but in truth, they are initiations. To want something deeply is to summon a process that reshapes you. And that process is not linear, clean, or predictable. It is wild, sacred, and often agonizing. But through it, you awaken. You see through the illusions. You stop chasing and begin embodying. You stop grasping and begin trusting. You no longer define yourself by what you lack, but by the truth that you are already whole. And from that place, this strange, silent, grounded place, you begin to realize that everything you asked for is already on its way. But it is not coming to save you. It is coming because you no longer need to be saved. It is coming because you became the version of yourself that no longer compromises, no longer shrinks, no longer abandons your truth to please the world. The transformation was never about the arrival. It was always about the becoming. And so, the test was never from the outside. It was always within. The delay, the solitude, the temptations, the fears, these were the gates. Not barriers, but thresholds. Not punishments, but passages. And each time you chose truth over comfort, presence over performance, soul over survival, you passed. Quietly, privately. And now, as your old self fades into memory, something else begins to rise. something you can't yet name, but have always sensed was there, a deeper intelligence, a stronger presence, a clarity that does not waver. And though nothing external has yet changed, everything within you has.